Hello everyone, back tuning in today's second video. We're going to have a look at the weather for the next week to 10 days for today's second video. It's going to take us to around the 20th of October, but we'll actually go up beyond that with the GFS, which of course runs to just over 2 weeks. We'll also have a look at Beijing Climate Center for the next 40 days. We're going to start off with what's happening in the tropical Atlantic, and then at the end of the video, actually, talk about Beijing Climate Center, I'll give you a couple of charts for the winter. We've just updated for October, and I'll show you what it's showing in terms of 500 millibar heights for December and for January. So that'll be right at the very end of the video. But we're going to begin by what's happening in the tropical Atlantic. So I've got 3 areas of interest. Let's deal with them one by one. We've got Tropical Storm Leslie up here. Actually, that's Hurricane Leslie now. So Leslie is a Category 1 hurricane giving sustained winds of 75 miles an hour. Forecast for Leslie is looking like this. It's a long way north, this hurricane, so its current position is just there. It's forecast to move in that sort of position, still as a hurricane, as it gets really quite close to the Canary Islands as we get through towards Saturday, and then it kind of like pulls away from the Canary Islands and begins to move southwards once again, and then it goes down to a tropical storm. So it looks like it's still meandering around, certainly up to Sunday actually, but it's still looking like a viable storm. So it may well be that this is going to get quite close to an all-time record long-lasting storm. We'll have to wait and see about that. It's been going for a very long time, and certainly up to sort of the end of the coming weekend, it is still a viable tropical storm there off the coast of Africa. So we'll keep an eye on Leslie, of course. Then we've got Nadine down here, much further south in the tropical Atlantic. Let's see what's happening with this one. So Tropical Storm Nadine, or Nadine, depending on how they pronounce it in the United States, as it's been named by the National Hurricane Center in America, is in that sort of position at the moment, and it's forecast to move kind of like northwards in that kind of position. So by the weekend, it's down to a tropical depression. We'll lose tropical storm status at some point over the weekend. And then, of course, all eyes are on Hurricane Michael. And Michael now is bearing down on the Gulf Coast of the United States. Very significant hurricane. This one developed very, very quickly. It's a Category 4 hurricane now, Michael, and it's giving sustained winds of 145 miles an hour as it heads in to that Gulf Coast of America. This is the track of major. It is a major hurricane because it's Category 4. This is the track of major hurricane Michael. As I say, it's very close now to that coast of the southern United States, the Gulf Coast, and it looks like it'll be slamming into kind of like the Florida Panhandle around here, the Alabama coast, just there. Really, really significant weather event. There hasn't been all that much about it in the media, I don't think, because it's been it's developed so quickly. So it hasn't been normally these storms you have several days of warnings, but this one has developed very, very quickly as it's moved northwards through the Gulf of Mexico, well, it just looks pretty severe. I'm going to be hearing a lot about it, I think, as it hits that Gulf Coast of the United States within the next few hours. It is imminent, the arrival of Hurricane Michael, so I'll be hearing a lot about it. And obviously, if you're watching a video from that area that's going to be slammed by Hurricane Michael, then do heed all of the warnings from National Hurricane Center and from NOAA and from the authorities in the United States. It's going to be a very significant event in the next few hours. Michael pushes northwards, goes down to a tropical storm as it heads into the Carolinas, and then very rapidly Michael is heading back back out into the Atlantic. It's somewhere around Newfoundland by Saturday, and by Monday it's actually to the west of Ireland. So this is going to move really, really quickly. It's got a very strong jet stream now coming across the Atlantic to push Michael across the Atlantic that quickly. You can just see the extreme western tip of Ireland just appearing on the extreme sort of right-hand corner of the chart as you're looking at it. By then, it will be down to a post-tropical storm. So that's how things are looking in the tropical Atlantic at the moment. I'll just bring you up to date with the latest advisory and discussion about Hurricane Michael. This is from, the National Hurricane Center. I won't go through the full report, but I'll give you the key messages. So what they're saying is that, number one, life-threatening storm surge is likely along portions of the coast of the Florida Panhandle, Big Bend and Nature Coast, where a storm surge warning is in effect. The worst storm surge is expected between Tyndall Air Base and Keaton Beach, where 9 to 13 feet of inundation is possible. Michael is likely to produce potentially catastrophic wind damage where the core of the hurricane moves onshore in the Florida Panhandle, and everyone in the hurricane warning area should prepare for life-threatening winds. Dangerous hurricane force winds will also extend well inland across portions of the Florida Panhandle, southern Georgia and southeast Alabama as Michael moves inland. Heavy rainfall from Michael could produce life-threatening flash flooding from the Florida Panhandle and Big Bend region into portions of Georgia, the Carolinas and southeast Virginia. And number four, tropical storm conditions will likely affect portions of southeastern US coast from northeast Florida through to North Carolina. And tropical storm watches and warnings are in effect for these areas. The sustained maximum winds are showing here. So at the moment, I say it's category 4, which means giving sustained winds of 145 miles an hour. That will be the case for the next 12 hours as it moves onshore. Bear in mind that's sustained, so gusts are going to be going above that, probably going to around 160 miles an hour. With gusts, and then as it moves inland rapidly, of course, it weakens in terms of the wind. It will still produce copious amounts of rain, but in 24 hours' time, it should be down to like a Category 1 hurricane, giving sustained winds of 75 miles an hour moving inland, and then you see that it reduces down to an extratropical storm. So really serious weather event with Hurricane Michael taking place in the southeastern part of the United States in the next few hours. This is turning into a surprisingly active hurricane season. We expected this hurricane season to be fairly quiet due to, we started off with quite cold sea surface temperatures in the tropical Atlantic, and also with a developing El Nino. Actually, this is turning to really quite an active season indeed, because we are now up to N in terms of the hurricane names, as tropical storm or hurricane names. We're up to Nadine. So when you get towards that, those sort of names, sort of N-O-P on the named storm list, you are having a really active season. The odd thing about this season is that most of these storms haven't done very much. They've just been tropical storms. They haven't tended to develop into hurricanes. This is only the second major hurricane that we've had this season. But nevertheless, really quite an active season that we've had so far. And there's still some time to go, of course. We're only at the 10th of October, so there could be more, actually, over the next couple of weeks. Right, coming back close to home, these are the GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles of the next couple of weeks. The red line here is a 30-year upper air temperature average. Looking at London today. So it's warm today. It is warm out there with temperatures substantially above average. A little bit of a dip in temperature coming up around Friday, but then they lift off again into Saturday before a definitive drop takes place over the weekend and into the start of next week. And then next week we go into a much cooler phase of weather at that point. So I did a video about this yesterday. It does look as though when the temperature cools down, which is going to happen over the weekend, when it cools down, there's no sign that we go back to the kind of warmth that we've got at the moment. But we have said this 2 or 3 times so far this autumn, and the warmth does keep managing to come back. But of course, it's going to be very hard once you get to the end of October to get temperatures into the 20s Celsius, but it can happen, and it has happened in the past. As far as precipitation is concerned, more rainfall spikes coming up now, so it does look as though we're entering a much more unsettled period, really starting as early as the end of the week and the weekend, and then just getting more and more unsettled as we go through into next week, with quite a lot of wet weather being forecast there into, well, we go to the final week of October now for the ensembles. It does look as though it's increasingly unsettled as we're going through the rest of October. Temperature anomalies are holding up though, from the 10th to the 18th of October, still coming out warmer than average, which you'd expect because we're not really seeing an end to these warm temperatures until over the weekend. So for the next 4 or 5 days, it looks as though basically temperatures hold up and then they start to slide away. In the north, it'll be as early as like Saturday, but in the south, it's going to take until Sunday to get those cooler temperatures through. So warmer than average temperature anomaly from the 10th to the 18th of October. Precipitation-wise, these are gradually turning more unsettled through the week. Now, many northern western parts of the country from the 10th to the 18th of October are forecast to have above average rainfall. The extreme southeast corner is still holding on to drier than average precipitation anomalies. Expect these to continue to trend increasingly unsettled and wet in the days ahead. It's how the GFS is looking for Saturday. We're bringing up this warm southeast wind, so it will be a very warm day in the southeast again on Saturday, with temperatures into the mid-20s Celsius, but an active weather front will bring lots of heavy rain to the north and to the west. Sunday develops that weather front into an area of low pressure, and as it pushes away, it pulls down much cooler air from the Atlantic. This area of low pressure just here, I believe, is the remains of Hurricane Michael. So by Sunday, from now to Sunday, Hurricane Michael has gone from like the Florida Panhandle to being to the west of Ireland. Very rapid moving system, this, and there must be a very strong jet stream to blow that across the Atlantic so quickly. So that low pressure there looks like it's the remains of Hurricane Michael on Sunday. That low pressure actually starts to head down towards the Bay of Biscay, but I think we've got to keep an eye on that, see where it goes into the start of next week. New area of low pressure is out to the west of the country on Monday, and then that low pressure develops into quite a deep area of low pressure on Tuesday, brings wet and windy weather in from off the Atlantic. And then we go into a very unsettled spell through the course of next week with low pressure on Wednesday and Thursday, bringing showers or longer spells of rain. And this low pressure carries on up to day 10, which is Saturday, the 20th of October. Looks unsettled, looks a lot cooler as well through the course of next week. So he asked me about westerly winds, and they asked whether at this time of year, you would expect westerly winds to generally be milder, but not really in October. That's more the case when you get through to the end of the autumn into the winter. In October, westerly winds will certainly be cooler than southerly winds. They'll probably be cooler than easterly winds a lot of the time in October as well. But it does depend greatly where the westerly is originating from. It just so happens that next week's westerly is coming from quite a long way north, so kind of north of west, if you like, from this part of the Atlantic that we're seeing next week, which explains why it's really quite a cool westerly. Obviously, if you have a westerly but originates south of west, so if you have a westerly that's originating from there, kind of like the Azores, then that's going to be quite warm in October. So October's a transitional month. It will generally be the case that westerlies are still quite cool in October, but it does depend greatly where the origins of that westerlies are. As I say, if it comes from the northern part of the Atlantic, they'll tend to be quite cool westerly winds. So that's how things look up to day 10. We bring down that fairly cool air from the northwest, and it's still quite unsettled. The more extended range builds up this little bit of a ridge for a time, and then that ridge wants to start to move up towards Greenland. So actually, at the very end of this 6 o'clock run of the GFS, we do pull down quite a northerly shot there. That's our first real northerly blast of the season. That would bring probably the first widespread air frost of the season to most parts of the country, probably bringing snow showers into northern parts of Scotland as well. If you follow the isobars back, the air is originating from a very long way north up there and moving southwards down to the UK. It's only a very brief northerly snap though, and by the time you go through to the very end of a GFS run, which as far as we can go is to Friday the 26th of October, high pressure is kind of like toppling in over top of the country, but at that point it is still quite cold and there would still certainly be night frost with that. That's very speculative stuff. It's over 2 weeks away, so don't take that too seriously. This is how the ECM is looking. So again, we've got these warm southerly southwesterly winds. That's what I'm talking about. It's a westerly wind really, but the air is originating south of west, so the air is quite warm, except in the far north of Scotland, where the air is actually originating north of west on Saturday. And go through to Sunday, that system pushes through, and then we bring those west to northwesterly winds across the country into next week. It looks unsettled, low pressure's never far away, wet and windy weather pushing through from Tuesday to Wednesday. Next week, that low pressure moves into the North Sea, turns the wind into the north on Thursday the 18th of October. Try to build up a little bit of a transient ridge for Friday the 19th, but the next low is waiting in the wings. That's probably bringing us up a bout of wet and windy weather. And up to day 10, looking very unsettled. This is Saturday the 20th of October, day 10, low pressure over top of the country. You see, again, the air is originating from the northwest, moving down into the UK, so not only is it unsettled, it's quite cool as well. Real change to the weather coming up next week if these charts are right. GEM, so again we've got this warm day in the southeast on Saturday, wet in the north and in the west. By the time you get through to Sunday, that system's pushed across the country and introduce those cooler temperatures from the Atlantic. Middle of next week, looking very unsettled. This is Wednesday, 17th of October, with a dartboard low over top of the country. That's bringing showers, longer spells of rain, quite cool temperatures as well. Real autumnal weather. Up to day 10, we start to build up this ridge, and it is trying to get itself up to Scandinavia. That's a little bit different to what the other two models are showing for day 10. And GEM's always a little bit different in its more extended range, so I don't think we should take that too seriously. Fine, just having a look at charts of the Beijing Climate Center. So these are the 500 millibar height anomalies broken down into 10-day periods. The first 10-day period will take us from the 11th through to the 20th of October, with below average heights in the Atlantic and the jet stream coming through rather like that. So it looks unsettled. We have got above average heights to the south and to the east of the country if we come over to that side of the chart, but increasingly that is being broken down by this low pressure in the Atlantic, so increasingly unsettled. Now then we look very unsettled for the final 10 days of October. This is the 21st through to the 30th of October, with below average heights over and to the north of the UK and also going into Scandinavia, and the jet stream is coming through the country like that. So that's just a very unsettled end to October with showers along the spells of rain. Quite cool as well. The air is originating from like Greenland, Iceland, coming down into that low pressure. So not only is it unsettled, it's pretty cool there also. Next 10-day period takes us from the 31st of October to the 9th of November, with above average heights over and to the east of the country, below average heights centred in the middle of the Atlantic. So high pressure is coming back there, if that's right, through the first 10 days of October. Centred a little bit to our east. It'd probably be quite chilly, maybe with frost and fog. And then we go through to the final 10-day period, days 31 to 40, which takes us from the 10th through to the 19th of November. Above average height still close to us, but it looks like they're drifting more towards the northeast, if anything, becoming centred towards Scandinavia. And so you would probably be expecting an east-southeasterly or a southeast to easterly flow to be starting to move in there. That could be starting to drag in quite cold air off the continent. The continent will cool down very, very rapidly at this time of the year. So although the continent is very warm at the moment, someone's asking me about this as well, although the continent is very warm at the moment, it doesn't take long at all to cool a continental landmass down as you're heading in to winter. So if you think that it's too warm to have cold weather from the east to snow, well, it is at the moment, of course, but it would only take like a day or two of northerly winds coming out of the Arctic, and it would be a very, very different story. So if you start to get easterly winds appearing in the middle of November, depends whether you've cooled the continent down, of course, but in theory the continent can cool down very, very rapidly when you get through to the latter part of the year. Finally, we'll just have a look at the Beijing Climate Center 500 millibar height anomaly for December and January. So this is just updated, and this is what it's showing in terms of 500 millibar heights for December. It's placing an area of high pressure above average heights to the north of the UK. Quite a strong blocking signal there. Below average heights out of Russia and down into many central parts of Europe. Presumably, we're bringing in an easterly flow. I see no reason why December couldn't be quite cold and wintry on that kind of setup. And if anything, the blocking signal is possibly intensifying into January. So, well, I've had a look at the temperaturometers and it doesn't really show anything particularly cold, but then these seasonal models never do. But in terms of the height anomaly, that could well be hinting at some really quite cold weather coming up for December and for January. I've not been through all of the data yet because it's only just updated this morning. And of course, we will bring you the full sort of winter update in terms of the seasonal models at the end of October. We'll include the Beijing Climate Center in that as well. But certainly in terms of the month-to-month 500 millibar heights, December and January are looking potentially quite wintry, I have to say, with quite a strong blocking signal centred towards the northern part of the country. But it's very speculative. We'll have to wait and see whether any of the other models start to agree with that. Coming back to the more reasonable time frame, that seems a hugely long way out, the more reasonable time frame. So still, we've got the Indian summer at the moment. It's going to stay very warm in the southeast up until Saturday. And then after that, it looks like we're going into real autumnal weather next week. It does look cool and it looks very unsettled as well, with bouts of rain coming in from off the Atlantic. And then these conditions may well see us through into the second half of October as well. Right, so that's brought you up to date with all of the updates. Don't forget to check out 5-day forecast if you haven't yet done so. Tomorrow we shall do it all over again and see what's happening for the next week to 10 days and bring you up to date with what's going on in the tropics too. But that's all for now, and thanks for watching.